there a correlation between missing persons and human trafficking? Absolutely. We have a number of our boys, girls, men and women that are going missing as a result of human trafficking, which is considered modern day slavery. Human trafficking actually comes in two forms. It's sex trafficking and labor trafficking. And what we have been seeing, what I have been seeing with the cases that we work, is that our children, 9 times out of 10, are lured online through social media. So a lot of times people think it's one of those snacky grabs, which we're saying that can still happen, but they are grooming these children this day and time. They're making them feel more comfortable, and they may not go in for the kill right away. It may take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to get their comfort levels up, and then they will go in and take advantage of these children.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to follow up with that. It's exactly right on point. You know, sometimes what we think we see isn't exactly really what it is. I think you all heard I'm a survivor of human trafficking. I was trafficked on the streets of New York for over 10 years, from the age of 12 till around 22. And what people think from Hollywood, from movies, or from what they hear, you know, I was locked up in chains in the basement. No, but there were mental chains in place, right? Human traffickers prey upon vulnerability. That's it. That's the bottom line. They prey upon vulnerability, whether it's an adult man that's trafficked for labor purposes, or it's a young runaway who's trafficked for purposes of sex trafficking. And that's what happened with me. You know, it was a mind game, and it ends up, traffickers use the trauma bond to control their victims. Stockholm syndrome, the trauma bond, that's what they use to control their victims. And people often ask, I'll finish up with this, well, why didn't you just leave? Why don't they just leave? They're not chained in place. Why don't they just leave? Because traffickers know how to manipulate vulnerable minds and put that trauma bond in place and keep control over their victims.
Can you all hear us?
Yeah, it didn't sound like I was on it.
So, good afternoon. I think it's still afternoon time, everyone. So I think one important factor to keep in mind, especially as it relates to communities of color, so we at the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute, we specifically work on the commodification of the Black female body for sex slavery purposes. So that's kind of the vantage point that I would be speaking from. And usually, I think there's this understanding that human trafficking maybe doesn't happen in your city or your town or your state. It doesn't happen to families like yours or in communities like yours, or whatever the case may be. But I think it's really important to understand that when Jerica talks about grooming, so what that looks like is somebody pulling up on your daughter at the bus stop or something every day where they know she's going to be and telling her how cute she is. Or that means somebody knowing like the route she walks home or whatever the case may be, and following her and giving her compliments along the way, or preying on something she's wearing or whatever. So sometimes it takes time to get into someone's mind so they will willingly go with you wherever going with you may be. And that's an instance of human trafficking. And so I think it's important to name that and to understand that some, like Jerica alluded to, it's not always like snatching somebody up off of the street and shipping them overseas somewhere. And whenever we think of the face of human trafficking, we don't think of girls that look like me. We don't think of girls that come from Southeast or come from South Central Los Angeles like I do. You don't think of girls who are trafficked from Long Beach, whose names are Keisha or Tasha or whatever. You think of different types of girls, or you think of international issues. But the fact of the matter is that trafficking happens in all cities, all states, all towns, and so no one is exempt. And I think having that understanding can really help us create safe spaces where communities, particularly communities of color, can feel comfortable in talking about these issues and understanding them from the perspective that all of us are, or no one is exempt, rather. And so when we were talking about, or when the question alluded to, how does this affect communities of color, in a very serious way, because if like our faces aren't flashed across CNN, then it makes it seem like we don't go missing and that we're not susceptible to being trafficked, when the truth of the matter is issues of trafficking as it relates to Black bodies is as old as America is. right? And this dates all the way back to, I mean, when you think of like Sarah Bartman, and when you think of the hypersexualization of the black female body in music, in the media, this is not something new, right? A brother on the subway like pushing up on you a little too tight is sexual assault, and we don't hear that enough, and we don't talk about it from people who look like us, because when someone who has blue eyes goes missing, she's on CNN, but when someone who doesn't have blue eyes and who skin color looks like mine, she may or may not be. So I think it's just important to understand that it affects communities of color in that way, because it's a thing that we're just now kind of starting to talk about on a global scale and understand on a global scale that we are super susceptible to this $32 billion industry that is literally snatching up our girls off the street, and nobody is looking for them except for groups like Derek was. And so I'll stop there. I'm sure there are like other questions we want to get to.
I was just going, and in people's living rooms, you know? I mean, a child can go online and say, I hate my stepmother, you know, my father made me take out the trash, and, you know, I just hate him. And then the traffickers in the, wherever, on Facebook, tell me all about it. You know? So it's not just on the street corner now, it's also in the middle of your own living room, right? And I have to say at this point, talking about race, which is, you know, we're here about talking about the missing children and all that. I was talking earlier with my fellow panelists about the fact that when I was arrested, which I was arrested even though I was a child, I was arrested in New York when I was 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 and 16 and 17 and 18 and 19 and 20 and 21. And when I was arrested and taken to the police station and then taken to the court in Manhattan and then taken to Rikers Island, I was a minority. I was a minority in jail and in a police station, right? So what you're saying is very true. I don't remember the other questions that she had at this point.
Hi everybody, I'm Lauren. I teach empowerment self-defense, so skills for stopping harassment, abuse, and assault. And when AJ contacted me and said that they were trying to put together this panel and you know, what did I have to say on the subject of the missing girls, I'm not an expert on that. I think it's horrifying, and DC is my hometown, so I care deeply. But what I do know about, which I think is very related and which you were bringing into, is the bigger picture about how patriarchy and white supremacy work together and come together in sexual violence. And there are a lot of ways in which they come together to oppress people. The primary thing that I talk about when I teach is that our society has taught everyone, particularly white women, to be scared of black and brown men. And that that is not, in reality, who the threat is. In reality, if you are to be, if any kind of sexual violence is to happen against you, whether it's trafficking, whether it's intimate partner violence, whether it's sexual harassment, whatever it is, whether it's rape, it is most likely to happen by someone of your same race. Now, I understand that that's a problematic thing to say, since we're becoming more and more of a racial society, and so you just can't say black and brown and Asian and Latin. But if you look at it through the lens of the way the research is done, the vast majority of attacks on women, on girls, and on LGBTQ people are by people that they know. And that goes right along with what all of you are saying, which is if they're grooming someone for that long, that is someone that they know, right? It might be someone who works at their school. It might be someone who's in their aftercare program. It might be someone who's a coach or a music teacher. But it tends to be people that you know. And so one of the things that I work very hard to do, I think that the media reinforces constantly that black and brown men are the people that we are all supposed to be scared of. And I don't know how many of you saw the recent report that came out about a study that if people saw the heads of men of the same size, just I guess the portraits you would call it, black and brown men were perceived to be bigger, more muscular, and more threatening. And they were perceived to be bigger and more muscular by blacks and whites alike. They were only perceived to be more threatening by white people. Makes sense, right? And so what I do a lot in my work is encourage people to look at behavior rather than identity. So that hopefully in trying to undo gender-based violence, we're also undoing the racism piece of that.
Hi. I just wanted to get back, if we could, to the recent so-called, and I use that word on purpose, uptake of missing children. And I am not an expert on that by any means. I was a runaway. I ran away many times. I'm a survivor of human trafficking. That much is true. But we have other people on this panel that are really experts on this, and I really want to, we were talking about this before we came up here, so I kind of want to continue that conversation if we could with you guys. And our ex-law enforcement person, especially former, and I want to talk about that because there's a lot of misconceptions and probably in this room, and people are like, wait, are there a lot of missing children every month, or are there not a lot of missing? What's happening? I know they have a new media person at the police department. She started posting on social media and all these people, but what's going on? The mayor says one thing and we hear another thing. So could we take it from there, please? One of you guys, please.
So let's take it back a little bit.
Thank you.
When we started the organization in 2008, 30% of missing persons in the United States were persons of color, and that number has since increased to 40%. And when we hit the ground running, and these statistics are according to the FBI, when we hit the ground running and we started going into our community didn't recognize this being an issue because when they turned the television on, they didn't see anyone that looks like that. So of course, it took a lot of work. And it still takes a lot of work. I mean, we're still in this 9 years later. And so what's going on now, what everyone is seeing, first and foremost, I'm glad that now, nationally, that this issue is coming to the forefront because we need lawmakers to change the whole dynamic of how missing person cases are perceived. And so, as everyone saw about 3-4 weeks ago, there was these articles coming out because the Metropolitan Police Department started putting these profiles out of these missing black, brown, Latino girls and boys. So let me go back. Boys are going missing too, and it's just not about the girls. And I think it's very insensitive if we're only focusing on the girls because there's a lot of boys going missing as well.
Yes.
And so once this commander started putting this, and I do applaud her efforts,
yeah,
because the community needs to know if you don't know they're missing, you can't help. So putting the information out there has been very profound, but I also think the way that they went about doing it, and I've had a conversation with them as well, they should have gave the community a warning up front to say, this is an issue. Yes. Admit to the fact that missing persons is an issue in the district. Don't try to diminish it, minimize it. It is an issue. It has been an issue. This is not an epidemic that's just popped up 3 weeks ago.
That's the point, yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And I think what's going on now, people are capitalizing on
yes.
this missing issue. So I'm starting to see all of these organizations, quote unquote, wanting to sit here and say they're helping these families or they're helping or find DC missing girls. They're all under,
check them out.
Yeah, it's all under false pretense because they are not snatching and grabbing them. Okay? They are not snatching and grabbing. No. We know that they're preying on the homeless shelters. We know that they're preying on children that are less fortunate. We know those issues, autistic. We just had a case 3 weeks ago because the mayor actually said DC doesn't have anything to try to issue in her press conference.
Wrong.
Well, in February, the Metropolitan Police Department went to the FBI to put out a warrant for this DC male who was trafficking children in DC. So we actually had a young girl from Baltimore, autistic.
So
she went missing. She was actually trafficked in DC for 6 days.
They found
the Uber driver actually recognized her from the information that we had put out with our partner Michael Basin and called the tip in. I received the tip that Saturday. And we sent units there. I actually had to get FBI involved because Baltimore police did not take it seriously. That's the other thing. So that's a whole other issue that we have to address. You know, law enforcement, they always look at us and classify us as runaways. You know what? We're not all running away. Okay? We are not running away. So let's get that correct. But this young girl was actually trafficked in D.C. for 6 days. She ended up in Laurel, Maryland. And when she was rescued, she actually told law enforcement that there was other girls. Oh. So when you think about all of these faces, all these black, brown faces that are out there, they need us to look for them because we don't know what the situation is. We don't know what they're going through. But you know what? The fact that this information is out there and they're saying that it's not an uptick, it is an issue. One child missing is one too many. So that is an issue.
And how can the mayor say that DC doesn't have a trafficking problem when a cop was running a trafficking ring?
There's 2 cops that was actually arrested, and you know if there were 2, then there's more, or someone knows something. So we were all on a panel. I don't know if anyone recognized or realized we had a panel in Ward 8 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
I was actually one of the panelists, and that room was very raw. It was very emotional. They were very hurt. The community, they were very, very hurt. And no, they don't know. They don't know what's going on because they're not being honest and transparent. Okay, I work for the government during the day, okay? But this is my organization, and I'm going to say what I need to say because you guys deserve to know the truth. Everything I say is unscripted. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what the facts are as I see it. And so I really think that if you don't know if there's an issue, say, well, let us get back. Let us find out what's going on. And take these cases serious. Stop labeling us as runaways. Stop deciding not to put us on in the media because you want to associate our disappearance with some sort of criminal activity or prostitution or something like that. Our lives matter too.
Yes.
And just to piggyback a little bit, you know, not everybody who's missing who's a kid is a runaway, as you said. And those who are runaways are running away from neglect and abuse. They're not leaving because, you know, they think they're going to get riches from running away or whatever. They're leaving because they're already experiencing abuse and violence.
Well, I'm going to say one thing. I know the other panelists may want to say something. But everyone remember Felicia Barnes, yes, who was the teenager that came up from North Carolina to visit her sister in Baltimore in December of 2010. She was initially classified as a runaway. It took 10 days to even get her information out in the public. And her sister's boyfriend is the one that actually killed her and put her in a river. And so we have to change the mindset. I'll be the first to tell you, I spent 10 years on the police force. And when I went to the police academy, I spent 2 hours on missing person cases. So law enforcement training needs to be enhanced because if you don't use, you lose. And when you're talking about the different correlations as it relates to people going missing, they need to know how to handle these cases, case by case. For example, autistic children who go missing or autistic adults. You need to know how to search for them. You need to ask those pointed questions because some children who are autistic, they may be attracted to water. That's the first place you want to go, to the water. You know, they may be attracted to something in their general area, but you have to make sure that you're asking the pertinent questions, and parents, make sure you have up-to-date recent photos, because you don't know how many cases come into us, and we don't know who we're looking for. So that is so important. I mean, with today's technology, I mean, I'm sure all of y'all have a cell phone. Y'all probably took a selfie before the panel got started. So make sure that you always have up-to-date photos of your loved ones. You know, we want to always be in a position that we're being proactive.
I so agree, obviously, with everything you just said. And police, okay, I was programmed, I use that word on purpose, by the trafficker that trafficked me. I never call him a man because, I try not to call him a man, because he wasn't what I think a man ever should be. But anyway, the trafficker programmed me to hate law enforcement, obviously. And he told me, you're gonna be treated like a criminal by law enforcement. And I was, even though I was a child. So, unfortunately, today, law enforcement, not all of them, I've interviewed law enforcement and asked them, do you think your perception of victims of human trafficking, vulnerable victims, children, quite often, are criminals or not? Are they victims or criminals? Is your perception shifted completely, or not shifting at all? And basically they said, well, we think it's shifting. So we hope and pray, and I've developed a training for law enforcement, but we hope and pray that we can train law enforcement and medical personnel and a lot of other people, but especially law enforcement, to have a paradigm shift, to shift that mindset, to say, wait a minute, maybe that 13-year-old sitting across from me, maybe she's not a criminal. Maybe she's not a prostitute. Well, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the TVPA, says, hello, if you're under 18, you don't have to prove anything. You're already automatically a victim, right? But yes, police definitely have to be trained, and trauma-informed training, everybody throws that around, but it's so true. Working with victims of autism, PTSD, you have to know how to talk to people, and all that takes time. And guess what? Nobody has any time. Especially, as you know, law enforcement, they really don't have time, but that's too bad. They have to make time, because that's what really makes a difference, you know?
Forgive me for not remembering the original question, but I just wanted to make a super quick point about the power of language and words, and how we describe something, and how we categorize and label human beings. And so I think that idea and term runaway, it can be a little confusing and misleading in a lot of cases, especially as it relates to young girls. And forgive me for saying girls, that's my experience for young girls and boys. Because if you are coerced and encouraged to leave your home or leave your school or leave a place even over time, then the term runaway allows whatever is going on to kind of be brush off someone's shoulder, okay, well he or she just ran away. When the truth of the matter is, there was coercion in place, there was manipulation in place, and there was exploitation and deception in place. And I think calling a thing is so important, because it allows police departments, and it allows medical professionals to be empowered to know how to handle certain cases, instead of just considering folks prostitutes and runaways. So when I first moved to the DMV area, I moved from LA to work on specifically to do research as it relates to changing legislation around human trafficking. And the first thing we did was develop language and define things. So that's what is human trafficking exactly? And what is a runaway exactly? And what is a prostitute exactly? What is a stripper exactly? Just so that when you're out there and you are trying to create legislation that is inclusive and that allows every population to have equitable rights, what does that look like? And the language in there is so important, because again, as you're categorizing people and as you're cataloging girls and boys, the things that you call them has power, it has weight, and will carry them and be carried with them for a very long time, as I'm sure we were talking about a little bit earlier. So I just think the power of words, and it's so important for us to narrate and to tell our own stories. So we're talking about cases and we're talking about trafficking, it's just incredibly important to support organizations like Derica's, where we can tell our own stories and talk about what's happening in our communities from people who are from that community and who understand the issues that come out of those communities, and to talk about it on national platforms, because otherwise you have folks who are outside that community talking about what's going on in that community, and that's when things get a little confusing and a little weighty, and that's how you get to mayors saying things like trafficking doesn't happen in major metropolitan areas. That's how you get there. So I think to have a good place to start is just to, how do we define things, and how are we switching our frame of thinking as it relates to human trafficking and as it relates to persons of color going missing.
And I want to just add a point also. When it comes to missing persons, it is not the sole responsibility of law enforcement. It's law enforcement, it's the media, and more importantly, it's the community. If you see something, you need to say something.
Yes.
And I want to touch on just based on the cases that we work quite frequently. We also have a lot of youth and adults going missing as a result of mental health.
Yes.
And in our community, we are in denial. And we think that we can just pray everything away. Prayer works, but we also need to make sure that they get professional help as well. So let's couple that together, praying and also giving them that professional help, because we have too many young people this day and time that are disappearing because of mental health related issues.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add really quickly, that's the faith and works, is basically what you're saying. So praying and organizing and going out in the community and looking for our babies. I think one thing that I was thinking about on the way over here is there are a number of really awesome groups that are creating faith-based curriculum for victims or survivors of trafficking. And so seeking out those type of organizations that are doing amazing work and that are bringing it into spaces where we already exist. So we're already at church, so we should have programs in churches or in any other type of faith institutions where folks can go to seek out help. So that way it's not so taboo. And mental health issues, trafficking issues, rape issues, like it's not so taboo if we talk about it in spaces where we already are, where we already feel safe and comfortable.
And that's a great point, and I'll turn it over to someone else. When we had the panel discussion, the town hall meeting 2 weeks ago, Black Women's has been doing this for 9 years, and we try to reach out to our faith-based communities because they're the pillar in our community.
Absolutely.
And it's been unsuccessful. And so I wanted these pastors to put their money where their mouths are, and I said, okay, I've sowed my seed in church, I now want you to sow into the community. And so we partnered. The first partnership, it just occurred last Sunday. We went into Liberty Christian Church, and the pastor, he was so moved at the panel because he saw how hurt the community was. So he decided instead of preaching, he wanted to teach. We had a panel discussion during his sermon time, and that relationship really took off because yesterday we actually partnered, which is so relevant, you being on the panel, we partnered yesterday to take a proactive approach and teach our youth self-defense techniques, because we want to arm them with the skills, knowledge, and techniques to deal with issues like this. You know, we are so quick to be reactive, but we need to be proactive because something like this can happen to anybody. And I think when you start working on the children at a very young age and going back to that muscle memory, you know, because they're so glued into their cell phones as they're walking down the street, not paying attention to their surroundings, and you are too, you know, you want to go back to something that you've learned. And one last point I'm gonna make is stop putting all your business on social media. I bet half of the room checked in at Busboys and Poets when you pulled up here. Am I correct? Raise your hand if you did. Raise your hand if you checked in. That's how these predators are preying. They know, like, you're setting yourself up, you know, even at your residence, to be victimized. So people know your every move. You have so many people out there just tracking your every move. And parents, create a fictitious account on social media and try to befriend your child, because I guarantee you, you're going to be surprised at how much information you learn about them or what they're giving up.
That's such a good idea. Every parent should do that.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple of things about that. One is, going back to what you're saying about mental health, I just keep wanting to tying it back into the big picture, and a lot of those mental health issues are because of trauma and abuse, right? You know, there's addiction in the family, there's poverty, there's actual physical abuse. Those things all contribute to a lot of mental health problems, including PTSD, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, you know, not everybody who is missing comes from a dysfunctional household, but a lot of the prevention can be done earlier in the stage before the kids turn into people who need to go seek connection somewhere else or are vulnerable. And vulnerability is a theme that runs through all this. Who gets selected are the most vulnerable people. And as to teaching kids and grown-ups boundaries, I don't know if I said this in the beginning, but we teach everybody from 3 and up. And there are things parents can do before 3 that can help kids understand that they have a right to their own body and that they have boundaries. So we're not only teaching, and I'm not sure what you did in your workshop at the church, we're not only teaching people how to hit and how to kick if someone tries to physically harm you or take you. We're teaching people to see the early grooming behaviors so that you can stop something, hopefully, when it is just in the verbal range, when it's in the boundary crossing range, and not a matter of actually having to hit or kick. And these are things that kids as young as 3 can learn. So I encourage, I love the fact that you did that with your church, and I encourage everybody to do that wherever you can in your communities. Because I appreciate your point that where people are at is the place to do it.
I just wanted to say, add one little point to this, what we're talking about right at this point, about teaching self-defense. I think about what was lacking when I turned 12. The summer I turned 12, I was barely 12 when I ran away for the first time. I did run away from home. I left home, right? What was lacking? Well, many things were lacking, and traffickers know that, and predators, not just, okay. What was lacking was self-esteem. And it wasn't lacking, it was not there, it was non-existent because of the earlier trauma that I experienced. So I think wrapping children in a bubble of high self-esteem is so crucial, okay? I've had law enforcement tell me, and many people might have heard this already, or maybe you didn't, law enforcement said to me, oh, I interviewed a trafficker, and I said, how many people have you done this to? And he said, oh, I don't remember, hundreds and hundreds. And how do you do that? You know, of course, his ego let him keep on talking, the trafficker, right? He was pleased to tell the police how he did that. And he said, well, you know, I might see a group of children in the mall, and they might be walking along, and I might say to one of them, wow, you look so beautiful, you can be a model. And that child that he addressed might look him in the eyes and say, thank you so much. And the trapper's like, whoa, move on to the next one. And then he picks the other child who's kind of looking at the ground, not really, and he says, you know, you could be a model or whatever he says, and the child kind of goes, well, really, and then the trafficker knows he has that child because of the lack of self-esteem. So, yeah, self-defense, and that's all really crucial, but self-esteem, right, is so important. However you build it up.
Part of what we consider self-defense.
Yeah.
I want to say on Friday in New York, well, in Detroit, a New York man was convicted and sentenced to between 3 and 10 years for trafficking young girls and women in the Detroit area. And last week, this father, 42 years old, he groomed his twin sons, starting at the age of 17, and they were just sentenced also to federal prison. And the way they used to operate, this is in Chicago, and they was trafficking young girls and women in Chicago and Indiana. But what they were doing was they were meeting these young girls at the mall and wanting to date them. So they started a grooming process, giving them money, buying them this, buying them that. So these little young girls thought that they were in relationships,
Yeah.
and then they went missing because they felt comfortable. Parents, you all need to wake up. We need to get back to that old school mentality. We need to know who your child is friends with, who their parents are, because in some of these cases, these young boys and girls have met the parents. That's how long that grooming process took place. So we need for people to get out of that stereotype, that myth that they're just going to snatch them right up off the street. That's not happening. It happens, but that's not what we're seeing this day and time. And they're using kids their age to recruit them.
Yes.
Because they are children, and a lot of times children, they're going to be charged as a child, so they're not going to get that harsh penalty. I know yesterday, this little young boy was actually, we posted on our Facebook page, this young boy actually raped this 14-year-old, he was 14, I'm sorry, this 14-year-old boy raped this teenage girl. She walked to the corner store, didn't come back home. She was reported missing. She was gang raped, and it was streamed online. And so now no one did anything. No one tried to stop it. No one even reported it. So these, and this was actually on CNN this morning, these are issues that are going on. We need everybody to wake up. Wake up, because too many of our children are going missing. Too many of our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, they're just falling off. I mean, when I look at these statistics, it's so staggering, it's overwhelming, you know, to go from 30% to 40%. But yet, we as blacks make up 13% of the population. We need to wake up.
It's triple representation.
Do you come in?
You guys have any objections to open up to questions? Okay. I have one kind of comment to make that transition though. So you guys beautifully touched on the whole topic as it transcends and cross sections. How is it, you know, how it relates to black and brown and white people, young people, men and women. So you talk about how it's a self-esteem thing. You talk about runaway. You talk about these are things that affect all communities, and the reaction, the responses, the community responses, the law enforcement responses are different because of white supremacy and patriarchy, right? Yep. So when you say you ran away, when a black person runs away, it's, oh, they're children. Like there's this criminalization of that.
Yes.
Correct? Exactly. I had one of my colleagues, her daughter goes to school with the autistic young lady in Baltimore, and they had a sit-in because community-wide they wanted to know, they wanted some answers. They wanted to come together as a school and discuss it and find out ways that they could help and assist in finding the young lady. But the principal kind of squashed the movement. She took away their voices because there's this perception that black girls or brown girls shouldn't speak. They should just, you know, deal with it as we have been, you know. And this is a response that is based on white supremacy and patriarchy, I believe.
Can I just say one thing? You hit a really great point. This is the last thing I'll say when we open up to the floor. It was very painful at this town hall meeting. We had this young girl who was a victim of trafficking. She had to be about 21, 22 years old. And she was asking the mayor and law enforcement, what are you all gonna do to help me and help young girls that look like me? Because she said, when I came to you all for help, y'all gave me drugs to suppress it. So that ties into what you're saying, how they try to silence us and give us medication to suppress what's really going on. We have to come together because we can no longer do this. I mean, I'm quite sure that's the first thing they want to turn to is some drugs. The pharmaceutical companies are making so much money because they're so quick to, you know, diagnose us instead of really dealing with the true issues. So, I mean, we have to figure out a way to get around that as well. So I just wanted to highlight that because you're talking about they want to be silenced. They try to silence her, but think about all the other ones that they're silencing.
No, that's why I do what I do because I'm not going to be silent.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Joaquin Nicklin. Hi. Two questions actually to the panel. The first one is to Ebony. Ebony, what was the response from the legislation that you all put forth, like the language, and how was that received, and what body was that introduced to? That's the first question. And then the second question, I kind of would like you to kind of expound on what you said earlier, because it kind of stuck with me about you two being a minority in that space. I just kind of want to know where you're coming from that perspective.
Yeah, so, hey, Joaquin. So when I worked in California, I first heard of human trafficking in college. I had never even heard that term before and started to be intrigued by what it was. I had heard of prostitution, I had heard of runaways, I had heard of strippers, I had friends who had like rap sheets they were actually being trafficked, but they were considered runaways, and we're just kind of caught up in these like cycles because after you're considered a criminal and then like you're released back to your trafficker because there's no programs for you, and the programs that are funded aren't in our communities, or we can't afford them, or whatever the case may be, so you get Xanax and you go back home or wherever it is that you came from, and then you're kind of right back in the same cycle. So when I first heard about it, we started working on this legislation in Sacramento, which basically made it so that in every shop that sold anything sex related, so that could be a lingerie shop, or that could be like sex toys, whatever the case may be, they had to post a national trafficking hotline number in the bathrooms, or they had to post it visibly. So that was, the language was actually, you had to post it visibly. So oftentimes that was in the bathrooms, or sometimes it was like behind the register, or whatever the case may be. So if folks were in the store and they were buying whatever they were buying, then the number had to be visibly posted. And that was like the first taste of like legislation that I got to work on as it relates to trafficking, and then it kind of just like followed my career after that. And I think the hard part sometimes about public policy is that that's such a process. And of course that's the way in which things should be done, but I think that a deeper question is like, what happens in a society when like 9-year-old girls are sexy? And what does it mean when you're living in a world where like kids are being missing from their families because they're hypersexualized for whatever means. And I'm sorry.
Pimp is a good word.
Pimps, whatever you want to call it, when they're gone missing for trafficking as it relates to specifically sex slavery. And so we tried to understand like those type of issues, but where it started was the first training I ever did was a training for law enforcement about language, because it was only my black friends who were being criminalized. I had white friends who ran away. I had white friends who were strippers. I had white friends. I went to middle school in the Valley. I went to the University of Southern California. I am of the 7%. And for some reason, only my black friends were like criminalized and had records, but my white friends who were doing the same things didn't. And so I was like, couldn't rectify that in my mind. And so the first training we ever did was a training for law enforcement to understand the terms that they were using to categorize people, and then the terms that are appropriate to be using to categorize people, and understanding that when you are throwing a girl in the system, when you are labeling her a criminal, like that is somebody's daughter, and that is somebody's child, and that is a human being. And those records don't go away that easily. So then it follows them for a long time. And then you kind of just get ushered right back into the system. So anyway, the first piece of legislation we ever worked on was to post the human trafficking number. And we worked on it with, the second one was with Karen Bass's office in California. And she's amazing. She's an advocate for foster youth. A lot of trafficked survivors are foster youth. And so anyway, I specifically work on the legislative level to try to introduce policy or make better policy that affects the lives of black women and girls, and that includes human trafficking.
Yes, I love her. She's so, and the foster care.
She's a huge advocate.
The name of the bill, but that's so crucial. I was on a panel with her at the McCain Institute.
Oh,
I just want to say, I went through the juvenile justice system and the foster care system when I left home as a child, and I was criminal. I was, and I was. My parents' rights were taken away, because as they should have been at that point. But yeah, she's great. I don't want to take up the Q&A.
I have a question for you.
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
What was that?
The earlier part.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I was saying was, I don't want to take up too much time. The summer I turned 12, I left home. I ran away from home. I was being abused in my home, and nobody would listen to me. I don't want to give you take up the whole time here. But so I started leaving home. And I repeat, I was from Fairfax, Virginia, right? One of the highest cost of living areas in the United States, right? And people don't think that victims from there are trafficked. I hear that all the time. They're like, what do you mean? How could that be possible? How did that happen? There is no stereotypical victim. I don't think, vulnerability is vulnerability. And so, at any rate, when I went through the juvenile justice system, and when I went through the foster care system, I didn't see a lot of people like me, is what I meant by that. And then later, when I was arrested over and over and over again, even though I was a victim, because the trafficker programmed me to say a false name, a false address, a false date of birth, it was all in my brain. I was 18 or 21, my name was whatever it was. And then I was arrested in the police station in a long chain of handcuffs in the police station and taken to the court at 100 Center Street in Manhattan. And then even at Rikers Island, there weren't a lot of people like me in Rikers Island. That's what I meant.
By you mean
I mean white women,
okay.
or children. I was a child still.
So
That's what I meant
I think
by
what
that.
she's asking.
And-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're saying when you reference minority, you meant that there weren't a lot of young white children who were in that particular
No,
chain of
no.
access? Okay, gotcha.
And even in Rikers Island, I feel that definitely. I mean, I can remember that. Yeah.
You have a question back here?
Hi, my name is Teresa Jenkins. I'm a child sex trafficking survivor. I was sex trafficked from age 8 to 12 by my family member. And the question that I have for your panel, as being a survivor for myself, is how is it that we can get the parents to take what's going on in the community serious? And the reason why I asked that question is yesterday I was out on Minnesota Avenue passing out some information about an event that's coming up to speak to residents of DC. And as I was out, there were more 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old children on the corners by themselves. There were little girls, I saw little girls walking by themselves. I asked them, I'm like, where's your parents?
Yeah.
They were like, at home, they over there, something like that. And me, I have a little southern roots in me, so we always say something to the children. So I'm like, come on, we can ready to go find your mom. The mother looked at me like, and who do you think you are?
Wow.
So then I went into, well, ma'am, this paper right here is talking about sex trafficking, and they're taking children. It's really serious. And, I can't tell you how to raise your children, but you really do have to keep an eye on them because this is serious. I met another young man yesterday who told me that there were young girls in the southeast area that were selling themselves for eyelashes.
Yeah.
Do you know eyelashes cost $1.99? And for hair leave, for eyeliner pencils, because they see all these Nicki Minaj's and everybody on TV and they want to be like them. And it hurts me to my heart because I can remember when I wanted to be like people on television. So even though I went through what I went through as a child, as I got an adult, because I didn't know, I still subjected myself to situations that, I just put myself out there for nothing, a purse, a pair of shoes, a wig or something like that. Even after you get them out of the situation, we still need programs and things in place to teach them how to not get back into that situation, to show them how to be productive citizens in society. Because as you were saying, when you get out of the situation, you're just left there dangling. You don't have anyone to tell you, okay, this is how you need to do this, or this is how you need to get up in the morning and go get a job.
Open a bank account,
Right,
whatever.
you have people look at you like the trash because when they look at your background, they see what you've been through.
Yep.
But they don't know that mama was a heroin addict, and daddy was an alcoholic, and auntie was selling me to this man and that man. And when I reached out to you, you just looked at me like I was nothing. So how is it that we let people know that this is for real? That's the first question. And the second question is, what do we do after these children or these men or women are found and we want to get back into society to lead productive lives? What programs do we have in place to help them? Because the drugs is for real. They do give you the drugs because they gave me the drugs. I'm 43 years old. I look like a normal person. I'm a PTSD. I suffer from PTSD, bipolar. I can't be in a room where the door is shut. It's just those situations that are real. So we really need some real help.
Can I just? I hear you. I hear you, right? I mean, I work part-time. On the door, there's a sign that says, "Please not. Don't just walk in here because of PTSD." Services, there just aren't enough. There just aren't enough of any kind. And forget about residential facilities because, I know one in New York City that has 4 beds, 4. So, I don't know.
There is this, I'm not sure if many of you have heard of knowthesigns.org, which is a nonprofit organization that tries to empower communities to know the signs of trafficking, well, of various issues, but trafficking is one of them. And I completely agree that there aren't enough organizations like that out there, but I think it's all of our responsibility to at least like come to a place where we try to know the signs of trafficking, so we can start. We don't have to call the police to understand like when something is happening, or if it's an immediate situation, how we can intervene or interject ourselves into situations, because it may save a life in that instant if you do something like that, or I have that trafficking hotline number like in my phone, so if I see something, like I can just quickly call it, or I don't have to Google anything, or if I see a young girl in trouble or whatever the case may be, like I can kind of be that person and not interject myself in a way that puts me in danger, but at the same time, like these are people's kids. And then I think too that one of the issues is that there's just, when funding becomes available for survivors of trafficking or for organizations, they go to like the Polaris Project, or they go to organizations that stop trafficking internationally, or whatever the case may be, because in a lot of ways, trafficking is an international issue. So for that reason, we need to work on like diversifying funding streams for organizations that are working to heal and house and restore our babies in Southeast DC or wherever they are in these areas, because when that funding goes to larger organizations, we don't see those beds. I don't know where these beds are, but I ain't never seen them. So I don't know anybody sleeping in those beds or housing or whatever the case may be. It's the same, and this is a like intersectional issue. Like for returning citizens who come back from prison, like there's so few resources for people to teach them how to put together a resume, how to go to a job interview, how to pay taxes, like those types of things. And so I completely agree with you, and I think that seeking out organizations, and they do exist, and I know a few of them that do such good work in these areas, but they're so underfunded, they're volunteer staff, and they're way overextended because the demand, I don't mean to get too churchy, but the laborers are few, and the harvest is plenty. So I think because of that, when we talked about parents, there are, I posted on my Facebook a couple days ago, ways in which parents can create their own, like, not nonprofit organizations, but like empowerment organizations to make sure that if somebody goes missing in their neighborhood, on their block, in their apartment building, whatever the case may be, they know how to organize around those issues, so that we as a community can like go back to a day when if Joaquin goes missing, I'm coming looking for Joaquin, like me. So you don't even have to, before I call Erica, like I'm gonna go, don't take Joaquin is the bottom line, okay? Not this one. So I'm saying that to say that, just having like accountability for one another, and also really putting some pressure on our legislative officials, on our council members, on our local mayors, on our governors to say, hey, this is an issue in your jurisdiction, in your district. So what are you going to do about it? Where's the money that's going to fund programs that stop these girls from going missing? Because enough is enough.
Well, Ebony didn't want to go to church, but I am. So we don't receive any funding, and haven't received any funding the entire existence of Black and Missing Foundation for 9 years. Matter of fact, we work full-time jobs. This is a calling, and I'm walking in my purpose to help people find their loved ones. And I think going back to the churches, as Teresa said, you see these young girls and boys outside. Number one, we have a lot of babies having babies. That's number one. Number two, we have a lot of single parent homes. What happened to all those programs such as the Boys and Girls Club? What happened to those camps for those children that are at risk? Everything is about money. So when I go into the church and I see every profession under that roof, why we can't come together as a community and help these children. I have so many people asking, even with my organization, why are the men not looking for the children? Well, I can't answer why they're not looking for them because I know I'm walking in my purpose. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. But I challenge you all to take a stand. We know that with legislation, that's going to take some time. So although I look at things in the long term, I want to look at things right now, in the now. What can we do? Like when you walk out of here, because the purpose of this is becoming solution driven. When you walk out of here, you should be empowered to want to do something. We have a Facebook page, and before I leave, I want all of you to like my Facebook page because I want you to see all these profiles that we have on our Facebook page of the missing. I don't want you to just like it. Don't like it. I want you to share it. Why you don't like somebody that's missing? Don't like it. Share it and help me find them. You know, don't sit there and internalize this information, you know, because there's just so many people, and we're national. We're across the country. And let me just put this disclaimer out here. We started the organization not to dishonor any race, but to even the playing field, because missing persons isn't a black issue, it isn't a white issue, it is an American issue. If you have a loved one that's missing, your heart bleeds the same way. So we need to really change the mindset all the way around. Law enforcement, stop labeling our children as runaways and associating our adults with some sort of criminal activity. Media, put these stories out there, as you guys saw in our video with finding Michelle Green. It took law enforcement taking a case, it took the media putting it out there, and it took the community, a vigilant person in the community, to find her. That's how it was with the young girl out of Baltimore. That is how it operates. It's all of our responsibility, and we have to come together, you know, to make a difference, to really uplift. And we, like I was saying earlier, we're always so reactive. Let's be proactive. How do we save them? How do we touch this child? You know, when I was a cop, I used to go to school. I used to teach the drug. I used to teach the game classes. They took all of that stuff away. So it's your responsibility to look who you are electing as your elected official, your politicians in your area. Make sure that they're fighting for the same rights that you're fighting for. And also understanding the laws, because when a child goes missing, a lot of times people think you have to wait 24 or 48 hours. Right. When it's a child, you can report them immediately. When it's an adult, if you live in Washington, D.C. or Illinois, you can report immediately. So we need to change the laws in other states where they can report immediately instead of 24 hours, because time is of the essence. Oh, yes.
All right, so that is our time. I want to thank our distinguished panel. Please give them a round of applause. I want to give each of them a moment to plug on the books or the work that they're doing, and you know how you can follow them on social media, etc.
I want to thank AJ for having the idea to put this together, and we